Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing good. Today we will be discussing a very interesting topic. Today we will be discussing a very important topic as well of foreign policy. The topic will be the complex interdependence in foreign policy. First of all, we need to understand the concept behind it. First of all, we need to understand the meaning of complex interdependence. So, when we call out a word when we combine these two words, complex and interdependence, what does we refer? What does we mean when we combine these two very important topics, very important two words in the in foreign policy, in the sphere of foreign policy. So I am using the technique of this dissecting the two different concepts for the understanding, for telling you, for explaining the complex interdependence. So follow my highlighter, yellow one, to dissect this uh, model from different perspectives with two schools of thought. One is complex and other is interdependence. What does it mean? What does it refer when we say complex? Complex is a thing in which different logical decisions are taken place to achieve our goals, to achieve the goals of a nation state. And interdependence means that it is dependent on each other. It's not a linear one. It is not going in a linear way, like a line is going follow this red marker as this line is going. This is not like this. Rather, this is like a multi-layered cake, just, which has different layers in them. Layer number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so on. Which means that if one is not completed, if one layer is disturbed, the whole system of a nation state among the nation states will be disturbed. One factor is highly dependent upon the other factor. So, what we are to understand, what we are to remember when we understand the concept of complex interdependence. Number one, the first most important thing which we need to remember is that this is not linear one. The concept is not linear. It is it is completely different from the linear model, which starts from point A, point B, C, D, E, F, and goes on. Rather, it is dependent upon each other. The the decisions, the actions of a state are highly dependent upon the actions of the other state, because their interests are because of their vested interest, because of their interest in the decision and in the making of foreign policy. So this is the slight overview of the complex interdependence which we are covering today. So let's move on to slide number 1. Okay, what is interdependence? In common words, in layman's term, interdependence stands for interlinked, the intermingling of different things. In foreign policy, in the concept of foreign policy, interdependence refers to a situation where the actors or events in different parts of the world system affect each other. When one thing is happening in one corner of the world, it is affecting the other corner of the world or the other nation state in the world system. Secondly, interdependence is a relationship in which changes or events in any single part of a system will produce some reaction or have some significant consequences in other parts of the system. We replace this word when we are discussing the importance of this concept in foreign policy. We often replace this word system with the word world, nation states, international systems. We include the prefix of international when we discuss this very important concept, very modern concept of interdependence. In future slides, I will discuss the modern concept and a comparison between the traditional concept. What were the differences? What were the two different standpoints of these concepts regarding foreign policy? Moving towards our next slide. What are the sources? What are the origins? From where we can understand, from where we take this concept of interdependence? For that, we say that interdependence or complex interdependence originated, or we can find it in a physical, in a natural system, in a social, in which economic and political systems are included, or the perceptual phenomena. So let me elaborate these terms for you. Physical or natural means that we are living in a world where states are connected through physical boundaries. So when we say that the complex interdependence play a very significant role in foreign policy, we are referring towards the physical nature of one state with another. That entity can be the one state within another, or interaction between a whole different set of states which are enjoining their borders with each other. So physically, when state are in interaction with another state, it is the physical or natural dependence upon one state on another. So this is physical. And what is social means? When we say social, we are referring very two important concepts. Under the heading of social interdependence, we see economic and political. Remember this as a flash note in your mind, that when you are asked to tell about social interdependence or social entities or social systems, you will include these two very important factors, which are economic and the other is political, in which you will see the economic growth, economic dependency, economic importance of any phenomena of any nation state regarding the economic phenomena and economic growth of the different another state. And secondly, the political one, how politics are involved, because in society, in our modern society, we are living in a democratic world where we interact with each other, where people interact with each other and elect their representatives. So in that at that point, when economic system and the political system are interdependent on each other, and that interdependence reflect the you can say the model on another state, the effects of economic and political pressures on another state. We write it, or we include this under the social source of interdependence. Number three is perceptual phenomena. Perceptual phenomena means that it is in a concept, it is in the mind. Like we think about something and we acknowledge that thing in our own perceptions. So this is somewhat perceptual phenomena, because before uh, going into play, because and so this social, physical and perceptual phenomena are the three distinctions which can clarify us. Three distinctions which can identify the one source and the other within the system. So help us to clarify. I am going to highlight this with red marker so that you may understand that we are linking this phenomena, this statement, this text with this the next point. Clarify the degree of choices in the situation of reciprocal or mutual dependence. So I highlighted this red because I want you to remember these two different lines, the set of this line, that degree of choice in a situation, that how much choices do you have, that how much choices do you have when given in an international system. So, and secondly, reciprocal or mutual independence, and you reciprocate, you react on those choices. For example, nation A has conducted a very significant economic development with another state which affected the state C. So what state C will do, state C will get into interaction with the other states like D, F, G to counter, to balance the economic development of state A with the state B. So this is called reciprocal or mutual dependence. So these are the sources which we clarify in our mind to balance. It is very important in international relations, in foreign policy, in foreign policy analysis, or when devising a foreign policy, that the action of state A balances the action of state B whatsoever. If state A is in interaction with state C, D, E, F, then state B is it must be the compulsion on state B to engage itself with the set of other states to balance their economic growth with the state A, because they both are in competition, because they both are in a competitive manner. But in there is a difference between competition and cooperation when we discuss interdependence. In interdependence, we make this model, the states try to make a model in which they prefer to cooperate rather than to compete with each other. So when we talk about cooperation, it is important to reciprocate the actions of one state on another state. Moving towards the next slide, which is the concept of complex. I am using this word, I am using this term complex and connecting it with the concept of interdependence. So the question arises in our mind that what is complex? Why we call this phenomena, why we call this pattern a complex pattern? As I discussed in a very slide in an introduction to this lecture, I described that this is not a linear in its pattern, that it is like a tree, like it is, uh, if you follow this marker, I tried to make this illustrate for you, I try to make an illustration for you. It is state A, this circle, if you follow this circle is a state A, and these appendages are the interaction with the other states. So we say that these are the end nodes, the nodes of these appendages represents another states of the word system. So if this was a linear pattern, that this should be like this: state A this, state B this, state C this. So this made this concept a complex interdependence, because this is not linear in its pattern. Number two is nation state is dependent, one nation state is dependent on another in a complex manner, as I showed you in my illustration. Number three, complex includes economic dependence, international aid system, and globalization of the world. So when we say that globalization of the world, we actually referring towards the cooperation among two different states. We can say there are two different groups of scholars who say that globalization is a good concept, and another set of people who claims that this is not a very good concept in this word of international politics, when referring to the concept of foreign policy. But that is another debate. That is the out of the scope of this class. So we will stick to our lecture, and I try to tell you about the economic dependence. That what is economic dependence? Economic dependence is that one country is dependent upon two or three or four or more than four countries economically, and reciprocate, and those four countries reciprocate this economic development with that state which engaged themselves in the economic system. So this is economic dependence. International aid means that one state is aiding another state. One state is aiding another state to increase the cooperation. Not the competition, but the cooperation among states or between two states. So this is complex. This can be a complex system. Take a moment and think. Reflect to the concept. Reflect to the meaning of complex. Like a web, like a cobweb, like a spider's web. Have you seen a spider web? The complex interdependence work that way. One line is connected. One action of a state is connected and will be responsible of the actions of the other states. That is why this concept is called complex interdependence. Let's suppose country A or nation state A wants to invade or colonize country B or nation state B, but that state refrained from attacking state B because state B is in the alliance with state C, D, and E. And state A knows this, that if state A invade state B or colonize state B, the state E, F, and G will counter that action. They will cut their economic development in state A. They will cut short their, they will include, they will apply sanctions, they will apply the embargo against that action. So state A will not attack, state A will not going to attack this. So this is like a cobweb. Follow this. This is state A, this is state B. I don't have that text tool to identify that, so ignore this writing style. This is state B. State A is in the relationship with state what happened? So the slide got mixed up, and there is a skip of one slide. So we were talking about the A and B. The country A is in the relations with country B, sorry, with country C, D, and E. And country A is trying to achieve their goals on country B, which is in relationships with X, Y, and Z. So when these two countries interact with each other, they will cut their economic growth, they will cut their economic dependence upon each other. So the next slide is economic interdependence, which is the most important aspect of this concept. The economic interdependence. Economic interdependence involves policy choice about values and cost, which means that in which you think about the values and the cost, in which you run a cost benefit analysis when engaged with different nation state. A relationship between two or more state or people or regions or other entities in which each is dependent on the other for necessary goods and services. Necessary goods and services require permissions, diplomatic permissions from nation A to nation B, among the nations, in different nations. So when we seek the diplomatic permissions from state A and state B and state C, we will have to give something back to them as well. We will bound ourselves to get into the interaction with those states which we are going to interact for our own benefits. Economic interdependence often occurs when all parties are specialized in the fulfillment of some requirements. They require, they fulfill their needs, they fulfill their agendas, they fulfill their objectives. For example, a nation states, a nation state need economic development. A nation state is suffering from agricultural backlash. So that state will engage itself with another state which will mitigate or which will compensate the economic backwardness of a former state. So they both requirements. They both are specialized in the fulfillment of some requirements. For example, a nation has a raw material in its hand. A nation state has minerals, abundance of minerals as a raw material uh, in its uh, in its borders. So they fulfill each other, they compensate each other, they cooperate with each other because their interests are same. Remember this point when you are discussing economic interdependence, when you are discussing the phenomena of complex interdependence. You should understand, you should remember this, that it is very important that they both have common interests, because without common interests, no nation will pursue another nation which is not, which is working against their interest, which is working against the interest of a nation state. In different parts of the world, nation states act differently. Nation states act according to their interests, their goals, their aspirations. So I often give this example to my class when I'm teaching interdependence, that this is not different from interaction between two people. You befriended with another person because your brain, because of your actions, because of your interests are same. You cannot make friends with the other persons which have different interests, which have different goals. So this concept is applicable on international system, on this uh, concept when devising foreign policy. The next slide is benefits of interdependence. But before going into the details of its benefits, uh, let me tell you the two schools of thought which we included in our slideshow, which you will see in this slideshow, that we included that I included the two school of thoughts. Number one is traditional school of thought, and number second is modern school of thought. The traditionalist believes in hard power. With them, because of the importance of hard power, they minimize the concept of soft power. Soft power is more or less related to the economic sanctions, economic uh, liberty, economic development, economic growth. And hard power include military, hard power include the military muscles, the involvement of different So this is the very loose and very easy conceptualization of complex interdependence, soft power and hard power. Complex interdependence come under the shadow or under the heading of soft power, and the proponents of hard power say the proponents of hard power believe that the world cannot be governed, the world cannot be formulated without the military might, as I have told you in our previous classes. So going into the details of benefits of interdependence, we see the benefits of interdependence can be expressed as a zero sum or non-zero sum. What is zero sum and what is non-zero sum? Zero sum is a situation where one gains is the other's loss, and positive sum situation in which both sides gain from each other, and in a negative situation both sides lose. So this is related to the cost and the benefits. This can be a zero sum game, this can be a positive sum, this can be a negative sum. It changes with the situation, it changes from one point, from one perspective to another. Zero sum situation is a situation in which one country takes benefit from the loss of another country. For example, a country is harvesting minerals from a small country, and that small country is not given the you can say the promised share or the promised benefits, so that country will be in the in loss. One country is gaining. For example, if one country, let me give you the example uh, from history. For example, a country is in a situation, is in a conflict with another country. At that point, the country which is in the conflict will give automatic uh, you can say liberties to its neighbors, because it doesn't have any option with them. So one loss is the other gains, and one gains is the other's loss, is called zero sum situation. Positive sum situation in which both sides cooperate with each other, in which both sides fulfill each other. Some liberal economists only think of interdependence in the aspect of positive gain or joint gain. They will not dissect this. They will not say that in complex interdependence we encounter a zero sum situation. According to some liberal economists, they say that in complex interdependence there is only positive gain or joint gain, in which everyone benefits, and in which uh, if everyone fails, it means that it is the failure of everyone, not the failure of one single nation state. Some liberal economists take this as a team effort. If a team is playing a football match or a cricket match, it means that that team wins, which means everyone wins. And that team and the loss of that team at the loss of that game means the loss of everyone's game. So some liberal economists uh, take the liberty to say this, that the complex interdependence is a joint gain effort, a positive sum situation in which both sides gain. So these are the benefits of complex interdependence. We'll move to the next slide, which is some other benefits of complex interdependence. Also, some liberal analysts, the people who analyze the foreign policy, the modern school of thought, thinks that globalization, the concept of globalization, make the world more interconnected, and the cooperation will replace the competition among the state, because they believe that interdependence creates joint benefit which encourages cooperation. But states are more concerned with their absolute gain from interdependence than relative gain. So there are different, I use different terms while discussing this point. Let me highlight that for you, that what terms I am referring to. Number one is globalization, then interconnectedness, then interdependence, then absolute gain, and relative gain. Okay, let's start with globalization. As we discussed earlier, that the concept of globalization means that this word is like a global village. This word is like sharing a culture. This word is using internet, using different modern applications, using different modes of modes of eating and food, which makes this word more globalized and more like a town in which we can be at the some place, and we can hear, we can listen, we can talk at the other corner of the world. This is globalization, which interconnected, which makes the world more interconnected. Interconnected means that people are complexly interconnected with each other. You can find the Pakistani citizens in different countries, and you can find different citizens living in Pakistan. So they are interconnected with each other, and then cooperation will replace competition. If you know economics, economics is all about maximization of profit. So in competition, you can gain profit, but when you cooperate with something, you can gain profit even more. But there is a trick in this. There is a point to ponder, or point to understand in this, when we are discussing cooperation will replace the competition. Interdependence means that states will have to gain relatively. Relatively means that one state is gaining according to its geography, according to its power, according to its influence in a region. So that is relative gain, with relatively with the other state, which is smaller in its geography, which is smaller in its influence. Absolute gain means that one state is acquiring everything because it is geographically bigger, or geographically mighty from the other state. Absolute gain is a negative term when we talk about complex interdependence, because they say that absolute gain is not give another country a chance to grow. So they introduced, the liberal analysts, the the proponents of complex interdependence, they include the term, they introduced the term relative gain, in which the gain will be divided according to the ratio of their size, according to the proportion of their influence, according to the proportion of their interests, or the importance of that nation state in one place, at one region, that how you are going to fulfill the goal of other country if you are given relatively good portion of a gain. And lastly, interdependence mixes domestic and foreign issues together, which gives rise to much more complex coalition and more pattern of conflict and different distribution of benefits than in the past. For a better understanding, I want to elaborate this concept. I want to make this concept more readily, more highlighted for you. In this century, in this era, we are not alone, we are not following the obsolete patterns of the world. We are living in a connected world in which we taste, in which we have, in which we developed some taste of different other words as well. The example of this statement, the example of this text is the McDonaldization of the international system, which means that you can enjoy the same burger, you can enjoy the same taste of the recipe of that burger which is being eaten in the United States. So their entity, their you can say their corporation, their business is in the different parts of the world. One country is investing like a businessman. One country is expanding its virtual boundaries in different states, in different nation states. And in that state also increase their business, also increase their propriety with other states as well, which makes them difficult to go into the war or go into the conflict with the other states because of the vested interests. Businessmen will not harm those who are in business with. Similarly, states cannot go against their own profit, their own maximization of their profits. So they increase in interconnectedness, they increase their entities, they increase their business models, they increase their industry, they increase the number of their investments in different parts of the world, with different countries, with different nation states. So these are the some benefits of complex interdependence. I hope you will remember this. And this is all from me for today. that we discussed, a very quick overview of our lecture is that we discussed complex interdependence, we discussed its sources, its benefits, the hard power in comparison with soft power, how they are connected, how one state is in connection with the other state, that how one state's action can inflict harm or inflict change or inflict consequences for the world if that action is taken differently from the other nation states. So remember this, that this is not a linear model. This model is not follow a linear pattern. Rather, it's like a cobweb. It's like a spider's web in which one branch is connected with other branches as well. If you touch a spider web, the whole web disturbs. The effect of that touch will uh, induce a different change in the whole cobweb. The world is like interconnected like this. If one state, the action of one state disturbs or induce consequences in international system, so every nation state is not not separately in its decisions, but when we are to formulate a foreign policy, or when we are analyzing a foreign policy, we should keep this thing in mind, that our policy options, that our policy instruments, that our policy actions can inflict a change, can induce a change in international order and in international world system. It means that a nation state cannot just go to the war with another state without any repercussions, without any reactions from different states. It means that the state is responsible, the democratic states are responsible for their actions, for their profit, for the maximization of the profit of their citizens.